Hi, good afternoon or good evening or good morning whenever you're watching this video. Today's lesson in social studies is identifying culture traits of the Middle East. First, I'd like to draw your attention to this map that we're looking at. And please notice, let me see if I can get the pointer the right way. Please notice, oh good, it works. That the Fertile Crescent is the place between two rivers. This is the Tigris and the Euphrates River running through modern day Iraq. And what we learned earlier this week is that the Fertile Crescent runs from the Persian Gulf, kind of in a crescent, which is like an upside down letter C, all the way through Syria, Israel, Jordan, and down even over into parts of Egypt along the banks of the Nile River. So now that we've got a sense of place and we know where the Middle East region is, where the continent of Asia and Africa meet against each other, let's identify culture traits from places in the Middle East. The way that we do that is by watching this slideshow and looking at photographs that were taken from different places. And Ms. Smith will tell you a story, and the story that I tell you will give you background information about the culture traits that you're identifying based on the pictures you see. Before we begin, I need to go over one piece of information. If clothing is called Western style, it doesn't mean boots and spurs and cowboy hats Western style. What that means is the clothing looks more American instead of Middle Eastern, because if you think about where the Middle East is and how USA is west from there. So sometimes Miss Smith is going to say Western style clothing, and sometimes Miss Smith will say American style clothing. Let's start first with a picture of two young ladies. In this slide, we see two Syrian girls working as vendors in a booth at the Al Hamabi Square in Hama, Syria. These girls are very young to be working. One is 12 and one is 14. They are vendors at a marketplace, which means they are selling books and magazines. Closely draw your attention to the fact that this is not written in English. The language that most people in the Middle Eastern region speak is Arabic, so that language is Arabic. You might notice that they are wearing hijabs. Those are headscarves. Ladies cover their heads as a form of modesty. You might notice that there is a stereo speaker right back here, so they might be listening to music. And up in the top corner, it's very hard to see, but there's a tiny little icons that's hanging up. And it's actually a crescent moon with a star. That is a symbol for the religion of Islam. Now, a lot of people around here in Georgetown, maybe they wear like a necklace and it has a cross on it, and that's how you would tell people, I follow the religion of Christianity. Or maybe you could have a Star of David, and that would say, I follow the religion of Judaism. Well, these young ladies are showing people that they are Muslim by having the symbol crescent moon and star. So just to get an idea, Ms. Smith will talk you through this. And then this is kind of where if we were writing our notes about this, we would write down notes and we would say, all right, we noticed that the writing is in Arabic, that these ladies are street vendors. The importance of books and education because they're selling books and magazines. We noticed the crescent moon and star Islamic symbol. We noticed that they are covering their heads as a sign of respect to God, but then they're just wearing like normal American Western style clothes on the rest of their body. And then, of course, the stereo speaker shows you modern technology. And something that you'll see in a second is geometric patterns are very, very evident in Muslim or Islamic or Middle Eastern culture. Next slide. In this slide, we see people in front of the Garwashad Mosque in the holy city of Mashhad, Iran. A Muslim place of worship is called a mosque, kind of like a Christian place of worship is called a church, kind of like a Jewish place of worship is called a synagogue. A Muslim person would go say their prayers at a mosque. Muslim people believe that they have to pray 5 times a day, and when they say their prayers, they're supposed to face a holy city called Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia. You might notice the geometric shapes and the patterns. There's squares, diamonds, triangles, hexagons. There's beautiful Muslim Islamic arches. And even though it's challenging to see, this is extremely intricate calligraphy written in the Arabic language. And as far as what people are wearing, you might notice some people in Western style clothes, and it's just a white shirt and pants. You might notice some people wearing very long robes. Ladies might be covering their head. One last thing before we go on to our next slide is that even though the people who follow the religion called Islam, their religion is called Islam, a person who follows the religion of Islam is called Muslim. So this is a Muslim place of worship. It's the Garwashad Mosque in Mashhad, Iran. In this slide, we see a Palestinian family sharing breakfast at dawn, which is right when the sun's about to come up. And the time that they are sharing their breakfast is during a Muslim holiday called Ramadan. Muslims show devotion to God. It's called Allah when you say it in Arabic. During a month in their calendar called Ramadan. During Ramadan, Muslims don't eat when the sun's in the sky. That's called fasting. So they gather together as a family to eat breakfast before the sun even comes up, and then they won't eat again until the sun goes down. They break their day-long fast. Exceptions are made in the case of elderly people, young children, if you're pregnant, if you are sick, you wouldn't have to fast during Ramadan. Once more, Muslims fast during the day and are allowed to eat only after dark and before daylight. So you might notice in this picture, look, the artwork on the wall is in geometric shapes and patterns. You might notice that what they're eating is a large family-style meal. They are eating on the floor instead of a dining room table. They are using their hands to eat, and everything's shared family style. You can tell that this is probably a young lady or a woman because she's wearing the hijab, the headscarf. And you might even notice that they are sitting on a woven rug, and that rug also has geometric shapes and patterns. In the next slide, this is Cairo, Egypt, and this is a street. In this slide, we see a large group of Muslims engaged in daily prayers on the streets of Egypt. They have gathered to pray at noon, one of the 5 times each day that Muslims are supposed to pray. You might notice that Muslim people are engaged in prayer. Again, it's 5 times a day, so it's right when you wake up, at noon, mid-afternoon, right before you eat dinner, and then at night before you go to bed. That's 5 times a day that the Muslim people say prayer. You notice they're not praying by like having their hands up or saying a prayer like this or like this. The way that a Muslim person says their prayers is on a woven rug, a small woven rug, and the way to show there's a bell. The way to show that their devotion to Allah, which means God, is to actually kneel down, and they have to face the holy city of Mecca. So this might just be a normal busy street in Cairo, Egypt, but when noon rolls around and everyone says, okay, guys, it's time to say our prayers, everything kind of stops for a few minutes. These people say their prayers, and then boom, they go back on with their daily lives. You might notice that this is urban environment. You could see in this picture that there's cars, that there's buildings and businesses, that the billboards and the signs are all in Arabic, not English. Let me just make sure I've said everything I need to. The people are kneeling down, they're on a rug, they've taken their shoes off to show devotion to God. Okay. Let me make sure I've got everything. Muslims pray 5 times each day: sunrise, noon, mid-afternoon, evening, night. Muslims know how to pray in populated areas because special people called Mezouins go to the top of a tower called a minaret, and they actually call and chant. And they say, well, actually, they kind of sing it. They say, hey, everyone, it's noon. It's time to say our prayers. Come on, everyone, let's get gathered to say our prayers. Of course, they don't speak it in English, right? That's me saying it in English. They would actually sing or chant a song in Arabic. And this is a very prestigious position for you to be able to call for prayers in a big place with a huge Muslim population. Also, it would be considered disrespectful to do your prayers if you are dirty. So that's why shoes get taken off so you don't track mud, and that's why you hold your rug so that when they say your prayers, you're not just on the ground. You actually are on a rug. I think that's everything that I need to say about that slide. This is a market in Jerusalem in Israel. I'm going to make sure I say what I need. We see men and women shopping at a busy open-air market in Jerusalem. Oftentimes a marketplace like this where you could go and you could kind of barter or argue about prices. It's called a bazaar. And you might notice that some of the ladies have their heads covered up. The men, he just looks like he's wearing jeans and a sweater and a polo shirt. And those are very Western style clothing. But then these ladies are covering up their head as a sign of respect and modesty. You could notice right here that there is writing in Arabic, and it probably says something like this way to the mosque so that people would know. The street signs in most Middle Eastern cities wouldn't be in English. They would be in Arabic first. And I think that's everything. It's an open air marketplace. Sometimes they call that a bazaar, and maybe they're bargaining for food. So if he's selling all of these oranges right here, then he's kind of setting a price for what he wants the food to be sold for, how much money he wants to make off of the food. So that was today's lesson where we looked through these pictures and we were identifying the culture traits. We were talking about why a Muslim lady might cover her head. We were talking about the Arabic writing. We talked about how Muslim people go to a mosque to say their prayers, and they pray 5 times a day. How during the holy month of Ramadan, Muslim people don't eat when the sun's in the sky. So they eat a big meal before the sun goes up and another big meal after the sun goes down. And of course, it could be family style and you could share. Muslim people pray 5 times a day, and when they're in populated areas like the streets of Cairo, you would have a very special person who would come and stand up and call people to say prayers by singing a chant. And then this open air marketplace in Jerusalem is where maybe people argue about food prices, and this is how you would do your shopping in something called a bazaar. Now, this does not have to happen until tomorrow. This is actually a preview of tomorrow's assignment. But what you're going to do is you're going to take the information that you learned in today's lesson, and you're going to write a postcard from the Middle East. Write today's date and a proper salutation to a family member. So if it's going to your mom, you say, "Dear Mom." If it's going to your aunt or uncle or cousin, then you'd put that. You're going to describe 3 culture traits of the Middle East that you saw in the photos. So you could talk about the language or the prayers or the clothing that people wear or what they were eating or anything like that. Describe 3 culture traits. Then you're going to identify 3 differences. They did this in the pictures that I saw from the Middle East, and we do this in our American culture in Georgetown, Texas. And then it says, write 1 sentence about something you saw that you'd like to know more about. And then you end the postcard with a closing statement. So you say from, and then you put your name, or sincerely, or love, and then you put your name. Again, today's lesson was identifying these culture traits for the Middle East. And then that postcard, the directions that I just gave you, that was a preview. That's going to be tomorrow's assignment. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.